And welcome everyone. And once again, we have bench doctor office hours. There was a small scheduling snafu, so class isn't as full as it usually is, but it's going to be on YouTube after it. In the unlikely event that other folks show up, obviously put your questions in the chat. I'm Ed Gardner, but you don't care because what you really want to do is see Scott screw up a really expensive actual Colt single action army. What year was it made in, Scott? Any idea?
This one is 1979. It's a Gen 3.
1979. So it's not, it's not from the 1800s, but it's really nice. So without further ado, Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you, and
All right.
it is your show.
All right. Well, thanks. And yeah, this is strictly for Ed's benefit. He wanted to see me take this thing apart, and this demonstration really applies to most single action revolvers, whether they're cap and ball or cartridge guns. They're all very similar. I have also on the bench a 1851 Navy that the frame, the guts, the working parts of it are all very similar to this. So if you can take this apart, you can take this one apart. The differences, of course, are in the cylinder and the hammer. This is meant to fire cap and ball versus a cartridge gun. And you can see the spur on the gun here. The spur on the hammer here doesn't exist on a cap and ball gun, but they're really very, very similar. So I'm going to take it apart. I'm going to kind of walk you through how to do it and talk about some of the pieces that wear and how you would go about fixing one of these. All the parts are pretty available for this should you need to fix it. And you don't need to take it to a gunsmith and spend a whole lot of money for some of these things. You can do yourself. Some of the stuff is, every one of these was hand fit, or they still make them, but they only make about 2,000 a year. And they're all hand fit from the Colt Custom Shop. So they're kind of unusual and kind of hard to get a hold of. And I managed to get this one in an estate sale from a family friend. So I got the lead on it early, and I ended up buying two of them. This is a 7.5, and then I have a 5.5 that I sold to a good friend of mine that's always wanted one. So anyway, well, let's get started. So the first thing, of course, is, since this is an old single action Colt, which we're going to check to make sure it's unloaded. So you put it on half cock, and a Colt, you can tell it has 4 notches. So you hear, or 4 clicks, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how you know it's a Colt. So we want to put it on half cock right there, and then the load gate will open. And I don't know if this is showing up on the camera, but I can now inspect that cylinder. And just roll all 6 cylinders by. There's no ammo in the gun, so we're good to go forward. Put my hammer back down for now. So the first thing we're going to do is take this lever off. This is your lever to pop the spent cases out. You'll see here, if you push on it, it pops the spent cases out. So we're going to take that off. And I ordered a set of screwdriver bits just for this gun from Brownells. So they're all custom fit for each screw on this gun. So I don't have to just gnaw at these things with a cheap, like Harbor Freight screwdriver. Use the right tools. It really wasn't that much money. It was $6, $7, but it was worth it. So I'm going to start by taking this screw out right here at the end of the barrel. And nice and slow. Okay, set that screw aside. And now this is going to take a little bit of tapping but notice I never use a steel hammer on guns. This is a nylon, and it has a brass side. The brass side won't mar the steel. I still don't want to use metal on metal here. So I'm going to use the nylon side and just give it a couple of taps because it's kind of down in there. It should just shake loose here. I don't want to get too rowdy with it. It should just pop right out eventually. Well, we'll come back to that once I get it further apart. I don't want to reef on it. But we also have, now we're going to take this screw out right here. This is little takedown lever. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a screw right there, and it's a two-sided screw with a spring in the middle.
If you can angle it towards the light, we might be able to see it.
Yeah, let's see. Right there.
Yeah, I can see something.
Yeah, there. Maybe that might be a better look at it right there. There's a screw slot on this side and a screw slot on that side. You see that screw slot right there? That's what we're taking off.
Got it.
Yeah, so the other side we can see, okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to go, first of all, pull this rod out. And some of these are a little bit tight. There we go. So that rod comes out. The cylinder comes out. There's my cylinder and the rod. Okay. Now I'm going to take this screw out on the side of the frame. And sometimes you have to hold it from the other side with another small bit just to keep it from rotating. But none of these should be gorilla tight. You don't need to tighten these things up super gorilla
Question
tight.
from the audience.
Yeah.
The rod, that just is the rod that the cylinder spins around, right?
Yep.
Okay. So on the I see you got an 1851 replica over there. That's integral to the
yeah,
frame.
this is built into the frame here.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, that's what the cylinder spins on. Get a better grip on this thing. Yeah, there's a little tiny screw in here that I want to be careful that I don't send into space, because I'm sure ordering it off of Numrich, it's probably a $12 screw. Probably comes out of a ballpoint pen, but I wouldn't know. I'd just pay the money. So I want to take this little screw out. Yeah, almost hand tight. Yeah, you'll have to bear with me. This is kind of a weird angle to be doing this, but anything for Ed. So that screw comes out, and then on the other side, you can see this little screw and spring. So these two screw together like that. So that's the whole sub-assembly. Set that aside. Okay, I wonder if I can work this out now. Yeah, we'll get it. So then what I do is I work from the top down. So you have these two screws up here on the frame. They're right in here, right here. I don't know if I can, let me get a flashlight and see if I can shine a little bit of light on that and show you what I'm talking about. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I know what they are because I'm
right.
back to my Colt 51, but I know I can't see them. And you might want to pull it closer into frame in the center. There we go. Now we can see things. Look at that.
Yeah, see these two screws right here.
Yeah.
Those hold that part of that frame on. So I'm going to take the grips off, and then I'm going to take those two screws out. So let me grab the right bit. And I think these original grips were made of gutta percha. I think these are probably some plastic or something, but I think the originals were gutta percha, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, let's see, just pop that off with a fingernail. Set that aside. And the interesting thing about this, and I don't know if it'll show up on camera, but if you can see the laser penciling in there, these grips are hand matched. That serial number matches the frame on the gun. So somebody hand fit these grips to this gun. There's a serial number on the cylinder as well, right up in here, that is matched to this gun.
We can't see the one on the cylinder, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, it's there. It's just right here. You know, it's stamped into the gun. So I'm sure if you were buying one of these, that would be one of the things I'd want to take a look at, is maybe check the grips and check the cylinder, if nothing else. I don't know how far a prospective seller would let you take one of these down, but they should be able to let you pop that out. That's not a big deal. And because all these pieces were hand fit from the factory and they're all marked. So that's just something I would look out for if I were buying, somebody was representing it as a Colt single action Army That would be one of the first things I would look at, were those serial numbers. So I'm going to take those two screws out right here again, right, those two. And there's three that that control, or that are part of this subassembly. And
Flashlight.
yeah, so you have these two up here, and then you have this one down here.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's this part of the frame that's going to come off. And you can tell them apart. These two on the top are one size, and the one on the bottom is a different size. So it's hard to mix them up. So I'm trying to get I need to get some better lighting. I have to invest in some lighting solutions here. This is where you want to go slow and be careful with the screwdriver, because you do not want to run that into the case, that cold case hardening that's on the gun. That gives it half its appeal.
Can you tilt the camera up or back or however it is so that we can see you? There we go. Thank you. Oh, and that actually improved the lighting a great deal.
Yeah.
Look at that. Not a lot, but actually, no, but enough. Now we can see it. Thank you.
Go nice and slow with that.
I have a question from the audience around comparisons with this and the GP100 in terms of durability and longevity.
Well, they're just two completely different things. You know, this was designed for a black powder cartridge versus the GP100, which is a big, stout, modern gun made for 357 loads and, you know, Magnum, and this is 45 Colt. So this was just made in a different era. I mean, they're pretty stout guns. I don't run heavy loads through it. I tend to download it a little bit because I don't use it for anything but a range toy and target shooting, and I just don't see any point in putting a lot of pressure on the frame. But it's pretty stout. But I mean, if you wanted a gun to just fire a ton of rounds through, I'd get the GP100. If you want a gun that is just truly a work of art and you know, be sort of a caretaker of, then get the single action Army. And if you wanted to really punish one, get a modern replica and Umberti or Pietro or one of those, and just, you know, run it. I'm sure the metallurgy is probably different, and it's probably, you know, an old single action Army. I don't think the metal work on them or the metallurgy, the alloys and stuff are quite as stout.
Yeah, but that one was built in the 70s, you said, right?
Yeah. But I still treat it as if it were built in 1873. Yeah. Because I want my son to enjoy it or sell it for, you know, beer money when he's in college. I don't know. But now we're going to take this mainspring off right here, this spring right here. And it looks like it's under a ton of tension, but it really isn't too bad. So there's a screw right there that we're going to take out. And let me get the appropriate bit for that.
Yeah, we can actually even see the screw. That's good.
Yeah. I'm not screwing around, Ed.
You keep blaming this on me, but this was actually your idea.
Dad jokes. Yeah. Now these are fun to do because they seem really, and taking a revolver apart seems scary as hell, but most of them aren't too bad if you take your time and you have the right tools to do it with. So I'm just taking that screw out. There we go. And you'll see that it fits up under here. There's a little roller right there. And that's what puts that tension on that screw. As you tighten that screw down, it adds the stored energy there. And it pushes up on that little roller. There's a little roller in there. All right, so that's the top half of the gun. Now we're gonna take this lower piece of the frame off. And once again, we have 3 screws. These two right here and one up front. And once again, the 2 rear ones are a different size. So that's, you know, it's pretty easy to tell them apart when you get it on the bench. So I'm gonna take that.
Do you have a screw tray that you put this stuff into when you're working on it?
Usually I have a little magnetic tray, but I have a towel just on the bench. I wanted to give it some contrast, so I just use the towel. I just have them setting up in front of me where they can't roll off. So you can take these screws out in any order you want. It doesn't really matter. And these you'll see are hard to mix up. These two are the same. The bolt screw and the hammer screw are exactly the same. They're almost like long pins, and there's just a little bit of threading up near the head. So that's how you tell what those are. And these two are the same, so it doesn't really matter which one goes back where. Let me take the lower part of the frame off first and make my life easier. So back these out.
And that's just a trigger guard that you're taking off? Or?
Yeah. Yeah, and there's just 3 screws that.
We are now well beyond the where I've taken apart any Colt replica. So.
Well, I was a little nervous when I got it because the thing was filled with like strawberry jam and cosmoline or something. I don't know what he packed it in. It was a really good preservative, but it made the gun just gunky and clunky, and so I knew it needed a full teardown. And so having kind of taken other guns apart, I was like, well, let's just go at it. And it's really not so bad. So let me just get this off of here. It just lifts right off. And you'll see, you know, there's 2 screws right there. And you'll notice on these other, let me set that aside. Okay. And you'll notice on this, where did I put my, see this? I don't know if you can see it. That one doesn't have it. There's a little,
there's a little lip on that.
Yeah, there's a little red. Some of these have little red washers on them. So if they do, keep them on there. Don't lose those.
Now you tell us.
Yeah.
So well, that trigger guard piece you just took off is usually brass on a black powder replica. You've got a different you've got a brass framed one over there in the corner, but on the ones that are all metal, even that part is brass. So just as a contrast. Because I've like I said, I've taken it apart just about there, not quite this much. This is terrifying. I am legitimately terrified.
All right, good. It's like a roller coaster. Will Scott be able to make this gun function again, or is this just a very expensive paperweight?
Did you get the lever gun back together?
I did. I would fire it if my HOA would allow it. Yeah, it's all back together. I think I finished it on that video. I think I actually got the tube back.
At one point you stopped screwing around with the tube and set it aside.
Yeah, no, I think I did it toward the end. Let's get this one out of here. And you can see this one has a little red washer on it.
My job as host is to distract you enough to make you put a screw dent in the frame of the gun.
Well, we'll see how this is. Yeah, can you shoot under pressure? Can you disassemble guns under pressure?
Field strip, go.
Yeah, that one you see. I don't know if you can see it. Let me try to light it, but there's a little red washer under there. It might be washing it out, but there's a little tiny red washer.
Yeah, and on certain angles on the video, I can see that there's a little red bit. What's the washer do? It's just
Colt put them on from the factory, and some screws and some they don't. I assume they're like maybe a little spacer or something. You can buy them. Brownell sells them. They're about $4 or $5 a piece. It's crazy. So, and then now here we have this spring is going to come out. So let's just go ahead and remove this spring. This
is where we warn our viewers disappointing overturn.
Oh, there's my, yeah, you're committed. There's your trigger. Get that. We'll take the hammer out. Get a little wider bit for this. Maintain control. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting that all you need is a flat screwdriver. Okay.
But a nice one.
Yeah.
Now you said those are special. Are they special metal? Is it soft metal?
I don't know, but they're the widths are custom to these screws. So there's a matching bit for each screw slot. So you don't end up knurling up the screw slot when you're not using a too narrow of a bit or too. So
and how do you know which one's for which screw? Just
the
because
one that
one that
fits. Yeah. So there we go. Let's get that hand out of there. All right. So there's all the guts of a Colt single action Army right there. That's it. The frame.
That's it. There's nothing else. There's nothing else in there.
That's
The
it.
rest of that is what?
Well, you
What
could
about the loading gate?
Well, there's a plunger right there.
Okay.
That's the screw to remove the loading gate.
You don't do that because that'll just trigger me.
Yeah. I'm not going to remove the plunger because it's kind of a bear to get that little thing back in there.
And the ejector rod.
Oh yeah. I'll get it.
I'm not. Well, yeah.
No.
You're gonna do it. Okay.
I'm a full service bench top gunsmith. It just takes a little bit of finesse.
We need a David Attenborough voiceover here with this is where he screws up the gun permanently.
This is where he puts his brass hammer through his laptop screen. Let me get it out of there. Come on. Ed's just egging me on here. Now this thing is fit tight in there. Yeah, come on. It's almost coming. I can see the little gap forming. Come on.
Is this the lever gun moment of this presentation?
It is. Yeah, and Ed made me do it. So if you're bored, I'm sorry. It's Ed.
Oh no, nobody's bored. We're all terrified.
Yeah, there's a sort of an arched, this tube is arched and it's custom fit for that right there. And it's just tight, it's just a tight fit, as I'm sure it's supposed to be.
Well, yeah, you don't want it to come out. I'm torn between wanting you to move on, but really wanting you to see this come apart.
We'll get it. Yeah, we'll get it. I've had it off of this gun before, so I know it will. The thing that I've learned is that you just don't force stuff on old guns, and you don't pry, because if I start prying on this gap, I'm going to nick up this colored case hardening, or I'm going to bend that tube. So it's better sometimes to just set it down and walk away and then come at it later, because this stuff can get expensive making these mistakes. So you can feel it loosening, but it's in there. Well, let's move on.
Okay.
Because I'm at that point.
You're going to have to tap it back in so it goes back in so you can put it back together eventually. But
what would happen is this would just slide out once that screw's out of there. But like I said, it is a super tight, snug fit in there because this gun really hasn't been apart very much. I think over time, the more you assemble it and disassemble it, the more wear it's going to get, and it's going to soften up.
Shooting and heating the frame up as it's going, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So now let's put it back together. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my hammer. Now, I was going to say that you can buy these parts off Brownells. If I needed this spring, Brownell sells this stuff. They sell the trigger. You're going to want to look carefully at this edge right here, because that's what engages that little sear. So you're going to want to inspect this stuff while you're in here and look at it. You don't ever want to change the geometry of this or take any material off of this stuff. But if you see any little nicks or chips, if there was a nick or a chip on that leading edge, I would just order another one. And you may have to take a set of files and hand file it. You can see a little bit of file work on some of these pieces. This one really shows it. It's not going to show up on screen, but you can buy this, what do they call it, a pawl or a hand, depending on the manufacturer. But this is the piece that goes up and coordinates with those notches in the barrel right there.
Hey, Scott, we have a question from the crowd.
Yeah.
If you were, concerned about having a stock of common wear items to have on hand for replacement, what all would you have in your toolkit for that?
I would say springs more than anything. I would probably get a mainspring, maybe the trigger spring. I don't know. This would probably not be too difficult to replace, this little spring here on the sear. But you're going to want to inspect these little, and maybe screws, because these screws, you know, these frame screws on the outside of the gun, they do back out over time, you know, right here. And so, you know, every time I shoot the gun, I check them. I don't use Loctite because they didn't use Loctite, and, you know, so I live with it, but I just check them every time. I could see one of those maybe backing out. So you maybe want to pick up and these are, like I said, the same screw, so they're interchangeable. The hammer screw or the bolt screw and the trigger screw are the same screw. So if you had a spare one of those, might not be a bad idea.
And when you check them, I mean, are they ever loose?
Yeah, every once in a while it'll turn maybe a quarter of a turn. You know, and that's the way they were in the day. They didn't have Loctite, and I want to be able to get the gun back apart and clean it, so I don't use Loctite on it, because and I don't frankly shoot this gun that often, so it's you know, it's not worth it to me to gunk it up with crud. All right, well, let's put it back together. So yeah, you just, well, before we get there, like I said, inspect. See, that's got a little bit of a flat spot on it right there. So I might have to come back with a file and just clean that up. I don't know how that little burr got there, but you're just going to take a look at this and look for cracks, look for a worn spring. You know, this leading edge here, just look at stuff like that. This is the pawl that rotates the cylinder, so you want to look at that. You can see, I don't know if you can see the file marks on it, but you can, oops, you can see where it was hand fitted to the gun. I don't know if you can see it on the face of that piece, but well, maybe not. But you can see where these pieces were all hand fit. So now the magic of putting it back together. All right, so this piece is going to drop into the gun this way. Where's my, there it is. So it goes like that. And down in here, you see this frame, this gap in the frame right here, right there, where the screwdriver is going in. This right there is where this is dropping in. So we're gonna put that in there. And so this goes in like that, and I'm gonna just compress that spring just a little bit and drop that straight in like that. Okay, a little bit more, and you'll see and you know, you can look through the screw hole to see.
I hate to be a jerk about that. Can you show that? Is there any way you can show that again, or is that?
Yeah,
that
you bet.
failed?
Nope, no, easy money. So you have your hammer, and then you have this sear and spring. There's a hole right there. It drops straight in like that, and then I rotate it up, so it's kind of up like that. And then it drops straight down into the gun, sort of this way. And this pawl and spring go into that notch on the frame. See that notch right there? So it kind of, you just put this in like that.
So is this where Ruger learned to put together Mark threes and earlier?
Yeah, I taught him everything he knows. So that drops straight in there like that. And you'll know you got it aligned when you can see through that screw hole. Now we can put our hammer spring back in there. I mean our hammer screw, sorry. Just drop that in there, get it hand tight. Okay, so that's in there, rotating. All right, now we're going to want to drop, and you can do these in any order. This is except this hammer spring is the last thing to go in. I'm going to take this pawl or hand, whatever you call it, and let me explain this before I do it. So this was the part that rotates that cylinder, that knob right there, comes up through the frame right there. See that notch right there? So you're going to drop it in, so it comes up through there, and it can only go one way, and I'll show you how it fits in. So see how it's kind of tight in there?
Yeah, no, we can see it. We can see it.
Okay.
Yeah, we could even see it, and then before the flashlight.
Yeah, so that's how it's oriented. It kind of slips in there, and then now your trigger is going to drop right in here. And I align these using the screws on the side of the gun, you know, like that. That's how I know it's properly aligned. So I'm going to drop that screw back in there, give it get the right screw tip on there. Make sure. And then I just get it started, a couple of threads. I'll tighten it all up later. But yeah, these screws do back out a little bit with use. So like I said, I inspect them before I shoot, and then usually a little bit right before I put it back in the case. So this one goes back in there. And this is called the bolt screw. Put that in there. Okay. Now we're going to put our this spring back in. And the thing to remember is this long leg goes toward the trigger. So it kind of rides up on top of the notch on the I'll show
what
it.
is that? What does that do again?
That's the hammer spring. You'll see.
That's the.
Yeah, see this little detent
The
right
hammer
there?
string. I got it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, see that little bench right there on the trigger?
Sorry, I'm abusing my privilege as the moderator by just asking the questions like, what in the hell is that?
Why is he doing that? What was he thinking? Yeah, there's a little bench on the trigger right there. And then this spring rides on top. You just put that right on top of that bench like that.
I got it. All right.
And then I'm going to put the screw back in. And then this one,
Stop interrupting now.
No, interrupt all you want. I'll be here all night. Tip your waitress. So I'm going to screw this one down since it's going to get covered up. Okay. And I just snug them down. I don't make them tight.
Do those internal screw, question from the audience, do those internal screws back out too? Do you occasionally have to take this apart and screw them back in? Or
I check them when I clean the gun, but I've never had them come apart. It's just these external ones for whatever reason. Give it a little thin twist. Okay. All right. So there we go. All right. Now let's, we got to put this back on. Get my screw tip. I like magnetic screw tips for stuff like this, but I don't think these are quite magnetized enough.
So we're all taking bets in the audience if you're going to slip the screwdriver and, you know, drag it across the metal and scratch the frame.
What's the money? What's the money line right now?
Oh, no, I can't tell you that.
7-1, 10-1.
I can't tell you that. Can't tell you that. We don't want to screw up the. We don't screw up the
you don't want to. Yeah.
But if you'd like to place a bet, now's the time to tell us.
Yeah, I got $20 against myself. That should throw the numbers off. Yeah, see, all right. Okay. All right, now let's see. Yep, that trigger's not going back into place here. Why did that not go in?
You are going to clock in at about an hour just with this gun, so we're going to have to come back to the Webley.
All right, yeah. Well, let me take this back off and see why that trigger's not dropping back. Yeah, the Webley's a whole nother beast. That's a fun one. That one I'm not that intimately familiar with, so I got another week or two to practice that. I thought next week we'd talk about like buying used guns and how to check them out and where to get them, and you know, like military surplus, but just basically used guns in general. You know, about buying.
Yeah,
them.
there's a lot of milsurp guys on the various forums in which we talk. So I bet you they'd be loving that.
Yeah, and I know
this time for sure we'll even put it out on the membership.
Yeah. Well, I know, and John and Marlene have way more knowledge in that area. I buy the really common milsurp, the Enfields and the Mosins and stuff like that. I don't SKS. You know, I don't have anything too weird, with the exception of the Webley. But let's see here. Why is this not wanting to work properly? Let's take that screw out and take a look at it. Yeah, Marlene just baffles me with her knowledge of stuff. I don't get it. I don't know how one brain can hold that much information.
We got
Encyclopedic.
we got a lot of smart people.
Yeah.
That's part of the charm of the club.
Yeah, I guess. I just, a lot of likable people, because most of my friends, most of my shooting buddies, men and women, are all from the club. I've met through club shoots or other meetups and stuff. I have a few friends that aren't members, but
You hear that? All right, so we need to highlight it in the YouTube video. Scott thinks we're likable.
yeah, and coming from one of the most unlikable human beings on the planet, that's saying something.
You know what? I'm gonna give you a run for your money there, because I'm pretty sure there are folks here right in the audience that might have an opinion.
Yeah, now I just prefer the. I'm gonna do an IDPA match on Saturday. They've opened it up for some reason. I think they're changing the guidelines and the rules. Why is that not wanting to release is what I don't understand. I wonder if that Paul is in the way. Maybe that didn't get seated right. There we go.
So this is where I now start to feel guilty that I've made you take apart a gun and you can't get back
No,
together.
I'll get this one back. This one's super easy.
Oh no, we're staying on the video until this happens. It's going to be a working gun by the time it's done.
Until you put a round through your master bedroom floor, just to prove that it works. Yeah.
We are here to watch this happen.
Yes, live. Yeah, we used to have this.
You're going to have to tell us. You're going to have to tell us what was wrong once you figure it out.
I think the pawl or the hand was not seated quite right. I think this piece down in here hadn't gone into its home. I think that is my understanding, or my best guess of the situation right now. So see, it's not lining up right there. So why not? Why not? Why not? Well, let's take the screw back out.
I would never have thought that this was riveting television, but I am
transfixed. Yeah, I don't know why that.
Mostly because I think it's my fault. So.
Oh no, it's all right.
Yeah.
I've taken this gun apart and got it working many times. I just don't know why that didn't. Now it's lining up. When I had taken it back out, it didn't feel like it was seated quite right. See.
So if in these intermediate steps, this is the thing that this isn't a question from our audience. It's a question from me. In these intermediate steps, is there a way to figure out you've got it in place without doing what you're doing right now, like other than it's aligned with the screw? Because I know in some that the only way to make sure that the hammer falls is once everything's in place.
Yeah, I think you really need the tension on the mainspring and all that stuff to really test it. I really don't think there's a way that to test it intermediately. You really need all that tension to do it right.
And do you need the tension on the? Do you need what you're doing now to have the trigger assembly or the trigger guard assembly on top of it?
No, not necessarily, but I can't put that mainspring back in there without.
Got it.
All right, come on. Get started, little screw. Get started, little screw. No, that's the problem. That one goes up front. Put that on. Yeah, like I said, these screws, there's two different sizes. The two small ones in the back, big one in the front.
Well, take your time. You got plenty of time.
Well, but the money on scratching the gun wants me to hurry up.
Well, okay.
12 minutes and then a blindfold. I think that's what's next.
Yeah, so a blindfold.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if you want to win the money on the scratching of the gun, just drag that screwdriver right across the gun now.
Yeah, you
otherwise take your time.
you control your own fate here. Yeah.
Yeah, gotta put more tension on that screw head, I think.
Yeah, you're gonna want to really reef on that.
Where's your hammer?
Yeah, if I recall correctly, this calls for impact tools.
You're not cranking those down nearly hard enough, Scott.
No, you're gonna want to put some. Let me loosen these up and let it give it a little bit of play.
Get a torque tool.
Yeah.
So that's enough from the peanut gallery. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had to loosen up those two rear ones to give it a little bit of play to get this one in.
So the rear one's pulled back on the front plate, and that's why it wouldn't go in.
Yeah. Wait a second though. I got nope. That's the wrong screw. See how it's protruding right there? I've made this mistake in the past. I grabbed the wrong screw for that, and I'm not going to make that mistake again. Tonight, it locks the revolver up when you do that, and I've done it in the past. No, I'm not
good suggestion. Good suggestion from the crowd here. They're saying use an electric drill. It'll go faster for you.
Yeah, I probably should. Yeah. Let's see. Those are those two.
Oh, torque is a thing.
Yeah. All right. Let me get this.
All right, everybody, be quiet. Let's let the man concentrate.
Oh, my beagle wants to say hi. Hi, Talon. All right. Well, let's see.
Hey, and Mike Ross, his cat said hi during his class.
Yeah, I know. There is a precedent for this. All right. Now, let's see here. As I drop it on the floor, that would be the. All right. So now let's see. We're going to put this mainspring back in. And this, I don't know if you can see it. There's a little bit of a groove right there that rides up on that. You can see that. It goes where this.
Yeah, I could see that in the video. So.
Yeah, there's
folks
a little
watching this after the fact. Just rewind the video and play it again. But it's definitely there.
Yeah, it's there to go where that little roller is. That's what it sort of indexes in that little roller there. So now
and are you screwing the spring in because we can't see the top of the?
Oh yeah, I'm just.
There you go. Thank you.
That's loading up the tension.
Put it back up where it belongs, so you do it right. We can see it.
Yeah. I just take it down tight. Guys have screwed around with these springs and softened them and cut them and done other things to change the trigger, but I don't do that. I just snug it up so there's no gap, and that's that. Tighten this all the way.
So now you're redoing the grip, or I'm sorry, the trigger guard springs to make sure that everything was snug in?
Yeah. And wait, no, let's see. All right, so now we need to put these on here, like so. And this little spring, this little piggy goes up here. It's starting to look like a gun. And this is when I wish I had magnetic screw tips so that I could get that started. Come on, little screw. Yeah, I wanted to show Mike how to change the springs in his Glock so that he can get that trigger smooth as glass in that 17. I mean, as smooth as glass as you can make a Glock trigger. But change that connector and spring another week, another video. That was almost a slip there, guys. But that's why I don't put too much tension on these springs.
It's because you used the word Glock.
Yeah, that's true. It could be. All right, get that. All right. Okay, so I'm going to do this. That's snug down. Get these snug down. Yeah.
So on a scale of 1 to Ruger Mark III, where would you put this?
I would put it up there between the, I would say this is easier than a Ruger Mark III to begin with. Maybe as time goes on, it gets a little, the Mark III gets a little easier. But this really isn't that tough. Yeah, get this cylinder to drop in.
So do you have to half cock the hammer to get the cylinder to drop in? Or
Yeah, it moves that pawl out of the way. That hand or the
the little doodad that comes up from the
I think some people call it a hand. Some manufacturers call it a hand. Some people call it a pawl. I think
I call it the doodad, the thing at the
Yeah.
bottom of the underneath the cylinder in the frame itself that we've been looking at. Oh, look at that!
Yeah. So now let's
Look
put
at
this thing back together.
Do you have is the extractor pushed back forward, or do you need to tap that back in?
No, it's fine.
There you go. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I know
Let
we
me
had
put
to.
this-
You were hammering it earlier. That
I was beating on it. Yeah, like the monkey that I am. So this is always a fun one. I hate this little screw because you have to keep a little bit of thumb tension on it, and this is what's holding that rod on there. Okay, I'm gonna go slowly and carefully because
I don't want to interrupt you, but where are you keeping thumb tension on?
the back side of this. This is
Back
that
side
one.
of the screw. Okay.
Yeah, just to keep it from rotating. All right, and then let's put this back on. I'm going to surrender on this this tube right now.
Yeah, no, we don't need to see the tube come off.
But theoretically, you just remove that screw, and then the tube pulls off, and then you can pull out that ejector rod and clean it. And I've had to do that a little bit. A lot of powder and carbon and crap builds up in that tube over time. But let's see, the last thing to do is put these grips back on.
Those factory grips?
These are the ones that came on the gun. I don't know if you can see the little Colt dancing horse and the eagle and all that stuff.
I can see the beagle.
The beagle, there he is.
Back behind you.
Over there playing with matches. He's
Yeah.
a good boy. He's a good boy.
So you mentioned earlier, actually maybe before the class started, look at that. It's back together.
It is.
You think it'll shoot?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
I don't believe you.
You mentioned earlier, and that's why you got the Colt 1851.
Oh, look at that.
That the internals are all the same.
Yep. I'll take the, let me just, we
No,
got,
you don't have to take it apart.
I was going to say, it's exactly the same.
Will those grip panels fit on that gun?
No, that back part of the frame is a little different.
Okay.
But I'll pull this apart real quick. It's you'll see that the guts are really similar. There's the grips are a little bit different. They're weird how it's a one-piece grip. It's a weird thing, but yeah. This is brass. I can easily take some metal polish and polish out scratches on brass, but can't do that on the color case hardening. But see how this grip is a one piece.
Oh wow! No, I'm gonna have to take mine apart to see that.
Yeah. Now, but you see this spring, this
Yeah.
hammer spring, and that it's got the same little wheel up in there, all up in there. And then let me just pull this off, and I'll show you I won't take it all the way down, but I'll show you the guts of it, and it looks exactly the same. I wouldn't be surprised if the parts were interchangeable to some extent.
I was talking with folks earlier before the recording started that some of those reproductions were made from the Colt patterns.
Yeah. I'm pretty
not
sure.
all of them.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this one was. Oops, I forgot to loosen that spring first. But this one I'm pretty sure was, because once I take this off, I'll show you what exactly I'm talking about, and it looks exactly the same. This one's older and crustier because I think the previous owner of it didn't care about it and didn't want the gun, so he never took care of it. But I'm here to give it some love. But if you look in there, there's that same screw, trigger, this is riding up on the pawl there. I mean, it's just, the
Oh,
hammer
works the
comes
same.
same
Except for
notch.
except for that fixed cylinder holder.
Yep.
Cylinder is that can't be fixed into the rest because it's brass and that's metal, so it
Yeah.
must come out eventually. Don't
Yeah.
take.
Oh,
I think we've already gotten.
let's go nuts. No, I'll put it back together off camera.
Yeah, I think we've given everybody enough angina on taking apart the
yeah,
real.
but you see the guts are just identical.
Yeah, they look identical. They look identical.
Yeah.
Question from the audience that I know the answer to: the brass frame gun is a Colt replica.
Yes.
So
I wouldn't be that cavalier with a screwdriver in a real 1851 Colt Navy.
no, you did it with the
Yeah,
dollar handgun that's off to the side, but it works.
it works.
Oh, well, this was outstanding. I have been completely enraptured.
Mortified.
Well, no, terrified, not
Yeah.
mortified. I'm not embarrassed. I was terrified. So I do appreciate everybody that's come.
Yeah.
We're going to do this again next Tuesday. What are we doing next Tuesday, Scott?
I think next week I'm going to talk about buying used guns and milsurp guns and just kind of the stuff to look out for, some places to get them, sourcing parts, kind of determining authenticity of some of that stuff. And, it's all the same stuff, whether you're buying a milsurp. There's a few little different considerations versus saying buying a used Glock. But, some of the fundamentals.
But nobody
are the
wants
same.
to buy a used Glock. We want to talk about milsurps.
Yeah. Well, I figured I'd pull out some old milsurp stuff and show people where to look for serial numbers and other things and the things you're going to run into with them, as far as cleaning cosmoline out and
you really are earning the name Bench Doctor. So,
well,
I think that sounds outstanding. So, we appreciate you sharing your beautiful revolver with us.
Yeah.
And not screwing it up, and otherwise giving us all hives while we were watching. And everyone, if there's any last minute questions from the audience, we'll go ahead and take them. But otherwise, I think we're about done.
Yeah. Well, and hit me up if you have any questions or if you have an old revolver you want to take a look at or want some information on. Ed's pretty well versed in the old percussion cap stuff, and I've got a little bit of experience with later things. So.
I have never taken it down to that. We've gone beyond my experience, but yeah, I'm happy to play foil.
Yeah. They're neat old guns, and there's nothing to be afraid of. All the parts are available for them, and just be careful taking them apart.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you so much, and we're gonna throw this up on YouTube as soon as we get logged out on the recording. So, everybody say hi to the dog.
Hi, dog.
We can't see the dog. No, you
gotta come over here, Charlie.
Bring the dog in the frame.
Charlie, come here. Come here.
With the dog in the frame.
Come here, dog.
The dog's so not going to cooperate.
He's right here. There he is.
There he is. Don't eat the screws.
Ooh, yes. He's a good boy. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Everybody stay safe.
Thank you, Scott.
All right.
Thanks, Scott.